The salvage arm rumbled through the deck plates, a vibration Renn felt in his molars before he heard it. He swung his legs off the acceleration couch and wiped the sleep from his face. The bridge of the good measure was 3 strides wide and smelled like burnt wiring and his own stale breath. A single amber strip flickered overhead, casting everything in the color of an old bruise. Sybil Koss did not turn from her display. She was leaning so close to the screen that her breath fogged the corner of it. Her wire-frame glasses caught the data stream in tiny reflections. "You need to see this," she said. Renn crossed to her station. The display showed long-range passive sensor data, a scatter of debris fields and empty space rendered in cold blue lines. One reading pulsed red at the edge of the scan radius. "What am I looking at?" "Mass reading." Sybil tapped the red dot. "Deep debris field, Graviath border region, assumed sterile. Nobody has swept this sector in 200 years. Renn pressed his thumb against the scar on his jaw. The habit was automatic and he hated it. Run the classification. Already did, the data scrolled. It does not match any known salvage category. No power signature, no heat bleed, no transponder, it is just mass. "How much mass?" Sybil told him. Renn did the math in his head and the number did not make sense. He did it again. Same result. Lise Von appeared in the bridge hatchway, arms crossed and grease smeared across one cheek. Her gray hair had pulled loose from its knot, and she looked like she had been crawling through the conduit shafts again. "We are burning fuel sitting here," she said. "The fold anchor needs maintenance. I told you that yesterday." Renn pointed at the display. "We are 2 days off course for that." "For what?" Lise stepped closer and squinted at the sensor reading. "That is a debris field, nothing there but rock and old radiation." Sybil said it does not match any salvage classification. Lice's jaw tightened. "That means it is probably junk nobody wanted the first time." Renn looked at the red dot on the screen. The mass reading was wrong for the size of the object. He had been running salvage for 15 years, and he had learned to trust the feeling that sat in his chest when the numbers did not add up. That feeling was alive right now. "We deviate," he said. 2 days, we take a look." Lice stared at him. Her hands dropped to her hips. "The fold anchor is not rated for sequential folds without maintenance. We make this detour and we get one more fold after it. If whatever we find is worthless, we are stranded out here with no backup and no rescue window." Renn met her eyes. "The margin is thin, I know, but the potential payout justifies the risk." Lice held his gaze for a long second. Then she turned and walked back toward the engineering bay without another word. The hatch hissed shut behind her. Sybil adjusted her glasses. She did not look away from the display. She is not wrong. She is not right either. Renn dropped into the pilot seat and began the course calculation. The numbers scrolled across his console. 2 days of fuel, 1 fold anchor cycle, and a mass reading that could be anything from a derelict station core to a rock with unusual density. He committed the vector and felt the ship answer. The fold anchor engaged with a shudder that ran through the hull like a long exhalation. Space folded around them, and the stars stretched into white lines before collapsing back into points. 2 days passed in the rhythm of shipboard life. Renn slept in shifts. Lice disappeared into the engineering spaces and emerged only to eat. Sybil ran the sensor sweeps on repeat, refining the mass reading until she had it narrowed to a margin of error smaller than her thumb. Then the fold anchor disengaged, and they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the debris field. Renn saw it immediately. The object hung against the black, a cylinder the size of a small station. Its surface was pitted and blackened, scarred by micrometeorite impacts and radiation burns that had bleached long streaks across its hull. It broadcast no signal. It had no running lights. It was completely dead. Sybil's fingers moved across her console. Spectral analysis running. She paused. The hull composition is neutronium-beryllium alloy. Renn felt the air leave his lungs. "Say that again." "Neutronium-beryllium." She turned to look at him, her pale eyes wide behind the glasses. "That material has not been manufactured in known space for 800 years. Renn stared at the dead cylinder. The scarred hull caught the dim light of a distant star and held it without reflecting. Nothing about the object moved. Nothing about it acknowledged their presence. It simply existed, heavy and silent, a piece of lost time drifting through an empty grave. He opened the shipwide channel. Lice status on the fold anchor. A pause, then Lice's voice crackled through the bridge speakers. "Stable for 1 more fold." One, after that it needs a full teardown. Renn felt the weight of that single fold settle across his shoulders. If this failed, they were gone. No rescue, no backup, just a dead ship and a cold grave in a field of debris. He did not let the weight show on his face. "We are going aboard." Lyce's voice cut back in, sharper now. "Say that again." "I am going aboard." Renn unbuckled from the pilot's seat. "Sybil, run a pressure scan. I want to know if that thing has an interior or if it is solid mass." Sybil's hands moved, the data scrolled. The hull is thick, but there are voids, internal compartments. Atmosphere reading is negative, vacuum inside. Renn nodded. He crossed to the equipment locker and pulled a suit from the rack. The fabric was stiff and smelled of recycled sealant. He stepped into it and began the seal sequence. The salvage arm groaned through the deck plates again. The vibration traveled up through his boots and into his spine. He watched the main display as the arm extended, its grippers opening like two massive hands reaching for the cylinder. The grippers made contact. The ship's mass sensors spiked. The reading jumped and kept jumping. Renn watched the number climb past every safety threshold he knew. The cylinder was heavier than any object of that size had a right to be. The good measure listed slightly under the strain. The deck tilted under Renn's feet and he grabbed the locker frame to steady himself. The amber emergency light flickered and held. Lyce's voice came through the speakers, tight and controlled. "The power draw from the arm is pulling from life support. We have 6 hours of air now, not the 12 I budgeted." Renn finished sealing his helmet. The faceplate fogged and cleared. "Make it work," he said. "I am going aboard." He did not wait for her response. He walked to the airlock and felt the deck plates vibrate beneath him as the salvage arm locked its grippers around the neutronium hull. The sound carried through the ship like a heartbeat made of metal. The airlock door cycled shut behind him. The inner seal broke. The outer door opened onto the dark. Renn stepped into the void. The command chamber of the last vigil hummed with a sound, so constant Zottel only noticed it when it changed pitch. The blue-white glow of the magnetic containment fields bathed the spherical room in sterile light, casting no shadows on the polished walls. The air was cold and thin, carrying the metallic tang of recycled atmosphere, a taste Zottel had known for every cycle of its adult life. The priority alert came without warning. Zottel's harness crackled as it turned from the command station. The blue discharge at its joints flickered faster, a response it could not suppress. The border observation drone had detected something in the forbidden debris field. A ship, not Graviath, not any configuration in the tactical database. Zottel pulled the footage onto the central display. The image was grainy, taken from extreme range, but the vessel was unmistakable, small, crude, organic crude. It drifted through the field of shattered metal and frozen atmosphere with a purpose that made Zottel's membrane tighten. The ship was tethered to the Consequence engine. The Consequence engine. 800 years of silence. 800 cycles since the War of Unraveling had shattered the old hegemony and sent the Graviath into isolation. The engine had drifted in that field, dormant and forgotten, a monument to a project that had failed before it could be completed. No ship had touched it. No species had dared. Until now. Tactician Ken moved to stand at Zottel's side, its harness humming at a lower, more aggressive frequency. The smaller Graviath's mass was dense with coiled suspicion. It had never approved of the observation drones. It had never approved of anything that invited the outside in. "Destroy it," Ken said. The words were flat, final. Destroy the vessel before it can transmit anything. Zottel did not answer immediately. It studied the footage. The human ship had not fired on the engine. It had not attempted to claim it with force. It had simply docked. A small, crude vessel with a salvage arm extended, touching a relic of a war the galaxy had forgotten. "We do not know what they are doing," Zottel said. "We observe first." The words came out slower than Zottel intended. Ken heard the hesitation. Its harness flared. "Observe," Ken repeated, the word dripping with contempt. "They are a dead species. The humans withdrew from galactic politics 2 centuries ago. They are extinct or irrelevant. We do not negotiate with ghosts." Zottel turned to face its second-in-command fully. The seal on the old archives had not been broken since the isolation began. Zottel had never seen a reason to open it. The humans were a footnote, a curiosity from an era the Graviath had chosen to forget. The humans were never fully catalogued, Zottel said. Their capabilities were recorded as anomalous. I will review the records before making a decision. Ken's harness emitted a low buzz of frustration. We do not have time for. I will review the records, Zottel repeated. The frequency of its voice carried finality. The sensor operator interrupted. Its harness flickered with the erratic pattern of nervous agitation. The human ship is not just docked. They have cut into the consequence engine's outer hull. They are inside the structure. Zottel's harness crackled with a frequency it had not produced in decades. It recognized the emotion as fear. The archival tablet was stored in a compartment beneath the command station, sealed behind layers of encryption Zottel had never bothered to learn. It took 3 attempts to unlock. The surface was smooth and warm, a texture Zottel had not touched in decades. The data within was fragmented, incomplete, translated from a dozen languages into the old Graviath diplomatic script. The first entry was a tactical report from the era before the isolation. Zottel read it in silence. A small human vessel had survived an encounter with a Vexari cruiser. The Vexari were hunters. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. The human ship should have been destroyed within the first exchange. Instead, the report described something the Graviath analysts had labeled pattern denial. The human ship broadcast false distress signals. It simulated engine failure. It feigned a reactor breach that appeared genuine on every sensor band. The Vexari moved in to salvage what they believed was a crippled vessel. The human ship detonated a decoy charge that created a radiation spike across the entire engagement zone. It vanished from every available sensor. It escaped. No casualties, the report noted. The human crew was not located. Their current status is unknown. Zottel stared at the words. Humans did not fight. They deceived. They did not win through force. They won through the manipulation of perception. The report was 800 cycles old. The doctrine it described was older. Zottel read the next entry, and the next. Each report told the same story in a different configuration. Human ships that appeared in places they could not have reached. Human crews that survived encounters they should not have survived. Human weapons that did not kill but disoriented, confused, redirected. Every encounter ended the same way. The humans vanished. The humans were never found. The archives had no record of a human ever being captured. No record of a human ship ever being destroyed in combat. The species had withdrawn from galactic politics 2 centuries ago, and the galaxy had assumed they were extinct. The archives suggested a different possibility. The humans had simply stopped letting themselves be seen. Zottel closed the tablet. Its harness was vibrating at a frequency that made the air around it hum. The cold in the chamber felt deeper now. The blue-white light seemed harsher. The sensor operator spoke again. Prelate, the boarding party has reached the core chamber. They report the humans are examining the activation mechanism. The activation mechanism. The consequence engine was not a monument. It was a weapon. A planetary defense system powerful enough to crack a world. The Graviath had abandoned it because the war ended before it could be deployed. The humans did not know what they had found. Or they knew exactly what they had found. Zottel turned to give the order. Recall the boarding party, seal the field, no contact. Ken was not at its station. Zottel scanned the chamber. The tactician stood at the far wall, its back to the prelate, a personal communicator pressed against its membrane. The conversation was too quiet to hear. The posture was wrong. The harness was humming at a frequency Zottel had never heard from Ken before. The communicator went dark. Ken turned. Its harness stabilized into a neutral thrum. The boarding party leader has a question, Ken said. The words were careful, controlled. The emotional content behind them was hidden. What question? Ken paused, a pause that lasted too long. A pause that told Zottel everything it needed to know. They want to know if they should engage. Zottel stared at its second-in-command. The chamber hummed around them. The magnetic containment fields pulsed with steady, indifferent light. The cold air carried nothing but the metallic tang of recycled atmosphere. You will tell them to stand by, Zottel said. You will give no orders without my authorization. Ken said nothing. Zottel saw the look in its second-in-command's membrane and knew Ken was planning something the prelate had not authorized. The communicator stayed dark in Ken's grip. The boarding party was waiting for instructions. And Zottel had just realized it could not trust the person standing beside it. The deck plates hummed under Renn's boots as he walked the length of the engine core. 300 paces end to end. The walls curved overhead into darkness. the Graviath script catching his helmet lamp and throwing it back in faint blue pulses. The chamber was a cathedral built for a single purpose. Lyse knelt at the base of the central column, her diagnostic tool chirping against the neutronium casing. She did not look up. Confirmed. Gravitational collapse inducer, targeted planetary destabilization. This thing could crack a world's mantle in under 12 minutes. How? Renn pressed his thumb against his scar. Focused gravity wave. It compresses a column of planetary crust until the core ruptures. Lyse stood and wiped her hands on her thighs. The power draw would have killed a small star. It's dormant now, been cold for 800 years at least. Renn turned to Sybil. She was tracing the script with her gloved fingers, her wire-frame glasses catching the blue glow. Her lips moved silently as she translated. Sybil, what else? She did not answer immediately. Her fingers stopped on a glyph the size of her hand. She read it, then she read it again. The technical schematics are straightforward: power routing, targeting mathematics, safety overrides that never got installed. She looked up, and the blue light carved deep hollows under her eyes. But the rest of this is not technical. What is it? A lament. The word hung in the cold air. Renn felt the vibration of the fold anchor through his boots. Lyse's tool chirped again, and she silenced it with a slap. Before Sybil could answer, the communication interface hissed to life. The translation algorithm rendered the Graviath voice as a flat metallic tone, stripped of inflection. Identify yourselves and state your intentions within the restricted zone. Renn straightened. He had rehearsed this moment a dozen times in his head during the final approach. The lie had to be clean, no complications, no room for the truth to bleed through. He keyed his own channel. This is Shipmaster Renn Wexler of the Salvage vessel Good Measure. We detected an anomalous mass reading and conducted a standard survey. We have identified this object as a piece of lost technology. We want to return it to its rightful owners. Silence. Renn could hear Lyse breathing through her teeth. You claim salvage. Your claim is on Graviath sovereign territory. The voice was flat, but the pause before the next sentence was deliberate. Why would you return it? Because I believe in good faith between species. Renn let the words land clean. He had said worse lies for less money. The silence stretched. Lyse muttered under her breath, "They are not buying it." Then the voice returned. No species that practices pattern denial operates on good faith alone. Renn's jaw tightened. The Graviath knew. They had read his file. They had read humanity's file. The Mosaic Protocol was not a secret anymore. He changed tactics. Then let me be direct. That engine is a destabilizing element in this sector. The Vexari are expanding their border patrols. The Nulvara have been detected moving through the void between systems. An unclaimed weapon of this magnitude is a vulnerability. If the Graviath do not secure it, someone else will, and they will not be offering to return it. Another silence, but this one was different. This one had weight. Your logic is acknowledged. The voice paused, but not accepted. A second voice cut into the channel. Higher frequency, sharper. You are lying. The engine is a weapon. You intend to study it, replicate it, use it. Renn recognized the tone of an accuser who had already decided the verdict. Tactician Ken, I presume. Answer the question. What question? You asked me what my purpose was. I will ask you the same. What purpose would the Good Measure have for a weapon that can crack planets? I have a crew of 3, a ship that leaks atmosphere on the port side, and a fold anchor that needs maintenance every 40 hours. I do not have the resources to weaponize anything. The channel went quiet. Prelate Zottel, Renn pressed. Your tactician is wasting time. The engine is here. My ship is here. Make a decision. A long pause, then the first voice returned. Tactician Ken, stand down from the channel. The sharp frequency cut out. Shipmaster Wexler, a Graviath shuttle will meet you at the debris field boundary in 8 hours. You will transfer the engine to our custody. You will depart the sector immediately after. Do not deviate from this agreement. Agreed. The channel closed. Renn let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. He turned to Sybil. She was pale. Her hands were shaking. Sybil, what did you mean, a lament? She looked at the walls. The blue script pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat. The Graviath who built this weapon wrote something on every surface, the same phrase repeated over and over in their old liturgical dialect. She read from memory, her voice barely above a whisper. This device exists because we believed we had no other choice. The belief was false. Renn felt the words settle into his chest like cold water. He looked at the vast chamber around him, the weapon that could kill worlds, the script that covered every inch of it, a warning written by the people who built it. They had known. They had known it was wrong, and they built it anyway. And then they sealed themselves away for 8 centuries, carrying the shame of what they had made. And now Renn was lying to them about giving it back. Lyse broke the silence. 8 hours, we need to prep the engine for transfer. Right, Renn shook himself loose. Get the clamp lines secured. Sybil, copy everything you can from that script. We do not leave empty-handed. They worked in the blue glow. The engine hummed beneath them, dormant but aware. The fold anchor vibrated through the deck plates. Lyse kept it online, just in case. 7 hours and 40 minutes later, Lyse's sensor panel screamed. Renn crossed the chamber in 10 strides. Talk to me. Something entered the debris field, high speed, no transponder signal. Lyse's hands flew across the console. Mass signature does not match Graviath shuttle configuration. Identify it. Lyse looked up. Her face was gray in the emergency lighting. Vexari, it is a Vexari scout. Renn keyed the shipwide channel. Sybil, seal the hatch now. The clang of the outer door engaging echoed through the hull. Lyse's voice dropped to a whisper. 20 minutes out, heading directly for us. Renn stared at the sensor display. A clean, fast-moving dot cutting through the debris field like a blade. He pressed his thumb against his scar and forced his mind to work. The truth was a weapon you only deployed when the lie would do less damage. He did not know if that moment had come yet. The fold anchor whined. The sound was a physical thing, a vibration that crawled up through the deck plates and into Renn's spine. He felt it in his teeth. The Vexari vessel held position at 100 kilometers. Smooth black hull, no visible weapons ports, nothing that made sense. They are running a full-spectrum scan, Sybil said. Her voice was thin, stretched tight, penetrating the outer hull of the engine now. Renn pressed his thumb against the scar on his jaw. He could feel the lie he had just told, sitting in his chest like a stone. Lyse Vaughn was hunched over the engineering console, her gray hair coming loose from its knot. Her hands moved across the interface in sharp, angry gestures. The fold anchor cycling is going to drain us to 5%. 5%, Renn, that is not a reserve. That is a dead ship. Do it anyway. She did not argue. She just gave him a look that promised a longer conversation later and keyed the sequence. The whine changed pitch. It climbed through the audible spectrum and then dropped, a deep bass hum that Renn felt in his lungs. The amber emergency lights on the bridge flickered. 1 pulse. 2. The whole ship seemed to hold its breath with the rhythm. Sybil's eyes were fixed on her display. The Vexari scan is losing coherence. The gravitational distortion from the anchor is bleeding into their return signal. Is it enough? Renn asked. I do not know. On the primary screen, the Vexari vessel sat motionless. No response. No movement. Just the black hull and the cold light of distant stars reflecting off its surface. Renn opened the channel. Vexari vessel, this is the good measure. I need to inform you that the cargo is unstable. My salvage team triggered a containment breach when they cut into the outer casing. The core is beginning to bleed gravitational residue. We are currently attempting to stabilize the field, but if you approach, the interaction between your ship's navigation core and the gravitational wave could trigger a cascade failure. He let that sit. 120 seconds. He counted them. Everyone felt like it took a year. The Vexari vessel did not respond. It did not move. The silence on the bridge was absolute, broken only by the low thrum of the fold anchor cycling and the flicker of the amber lights. Then the sensor contact began to move. Slowly at first, a drift away from their position. Then the drift became acceleration. The acceleration became a burn. The Vexari vessel grew smaller on the screen, a black speck against the darkness, and then it was gone. Renn held his breath until the sensor contact faded from the display entirely. Lyse slumped back in her seat. Her hands fell away from the console. The fold anchor wound down, the whine descending into a low hum and then silence. She looked at him. That was not a plan, that was improvisation. Renn stared at the empty space where the Vexari ship had been. The scar on his jaw was numb where his thumb had been pressing. No, he said, that was the plan. The plan is always to make them believe we have something to lose. Sybil took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Her hands were shaking. They were running a deep scan. If they had gotten another 30 seconds of clean data, they would have known the engine was dormant. They would have known everything we said was a fabrication. But they did not, Renn said. They did not, Sybil agreed. This time. Lice was already up, moving toward the hatch that led down to engineering. I need to check the anchor coupling. If that cycling stressed the mount, we are not jumping anywhere. The hatch hissed open and shut behind her. Renn stayed in his seat. The bridge felt smaller than it had an hour ago. The smell of burnt wiring was stronger now, mixed with the sharp, acrid scent of Lice's sweat from the manual reroute. The amber lights had stopped flickering, but the ship still felt wrong, like it was waiting for something else to go wrong. Sybil was watching him. He could feel her pale eyes on the side of his face. "What?" he said. "You told them the engine was unstable. You told them we had triggered a containment breach. You made it sound like the weapon was still dangerous, still active." "It was a lie." "I know," she put her glasses back on. "The question is why? Why risk your ship to protect a weapon that belongs to a species that does not trust us? Why protect them from the Vexari at all?" Renn opened his mouth to give her an answer. He did not have one. The comm panel lit up, a Graviath signal private channel. Renn keyed it open. Zottl's voice came through the bridge speakers. The harness crackled in the background, that low blue discharge sound that Renn had learned to associate with tension. "You lied to the Vexari." The prelate's voice was different, not accusatory, something else, something Renn could not place. "You risked your vessel, you risked your crew, you risked everything to protect a weapon that does not belong to you." Renn stared at the comm panel. He opened his mouth to give another lie. He stopped. The words did not come. He had been lying for so long, so consistently, that the truth felt foreign in his mouth. He did not know how to say it. He did not know if he even understood it himself. The silence stretched. Zottl waited. Renn pressed his thumb against the scar on his jaw. The weight of the Mosaic protocol settled over him like a second skin. The doctrine said, "Control what the enemy sees." The doctrine said, "The truth is a weapon you only deploy when the lie would do less damage." But Zottl was not the enemy, was it? "I do not know," Renn said. The words felt wrong in his throat. They tasted like something he had forgotten how to swallow. "I do not know why I did it." Zottl said nothing. The harness crackled. The silence was the only answer Renn got. On the screen, the debris field drifted past. Broken metal and ancient stone. The ghost of a war no one alive remembered. And somewhere out there, the Vexari were already reporting back to whatever command structure had sent them. Renn had bought them time. He had not bought them safety. The comm channel remained open. Zottl was still waiting. And Renn still did not know what to say. The Graviath shuttle docked with a sound like a bone cracking. The airlock cycled, and Prelate Zottl floated through the threshold into a world that should not exist. The heat hit first. Human ships ran warm, humid, thick with the residue of biological processes that Graviath vessels scrubbed from every recirculated breath. Zottl's harness buzzed as it adjusted magnetic compensators, recalibrating for the unfamiliar gravity gradient. The smell was overwhelming. Oil, metal, something like cooked plant matter. And beneath it all, the sharp chemical tang of living creatures packed into a space too small for them. Renn Wexler stood 4 meters away, one hand braced against a bulkhead. His scarred face was unreadable. Behind him, the stocky engineer named Lice Vaughn had her arms crossed, her eyes tracking Zottl's harness with the cold assessment of someone evaluating a malfunctioning machine. The older woman, Sybil Koss, held a datapad and watched Zottl with an expression the Graviath had no word for. Curiosity without fear. Clinical and patient. Renn gestured down the corridor. "Mess deck is this way if you can fit." The corridor was narrow. Zottl's harness carried it at a meter's clearance, but the magnetic field scraped against the walls, leaving faint scorch marks on the paint. The human ship was a labyrinth of tight angles and exposed conduits. Everything was bolted down. Nothing was decorative. Every surface showed the wear of years. The mess deck was a compartment barely large enough for 4 humans and their equipment. A table was welded to the floor. Chairs in mismatched colors surrounded it. Zottl did not attempt to sit. It hovered above the deck plates, harness humming, and watched the humans arrange themselves. Renn sat, Lice leaned against a counter. Sybil remained standing near the door. Condensation beaded on the bulkheads. Droplets formed and fell in a slow rhythm. each one striking the deck with a sound too soft for Graviath hearing, but present in the vibration through the hull. Zotl spoke first. "You lied to the Vexari." Renn's thumb found the scar on his jaw. He pressed it once, a gesture so consistent the Graviath had catalogued it as a stress tell 3 transmissions ago. "I did." "You protected our weapon," the harness crackled. "But you are salvagers, you came for profit. Why did you not sell it to the highest bidder?" The silence stretched. Renn's thumb pressed again. Sybil spoke instead. Her voice was thin but steady. "The script on the engine's hull is a lament, 800 years old. Your ancestors wrote it while they built the weapon." She held up the data pad. "It says, 'We who have lost everything now for the end of everything. May those who find this forgive us.'" She lowered the pad. "We read it before we knew what the engine was. We read it before we decided what to do." Zotl's harness flickered. "You are saying the inscription changed your calculation." "We are not in the business of handing weapons to people who will use them," Sybil said. "We are in the business of making sure they go home." Home, the word landed strange in the Graviath translation matrix. Zotl processed it, turned it over, found no satisfying fit. "You abandoned the galaxy," Zotl said. 200 cycles ago, human space went silent. No signals, no traffic, no evidence of continued civilization. The consensus was extinction or retreat beyond the rim. What is home to a species that chose to vanish? Renn leaned forward, the chair creaked. "We did not abandon it, we hid." The words were flat, no pride, no shame, just fact. 200 years ago, the Vexari made an incursion into human territory. They sent a fleet. They did not come back. The galaxy assumed we were destroyed or foolish enough to launch a counterattack that failed. Renn's hand moved away from his scar. "We were neither. We dismantled every signal buoy, every beacon, every active transmission source. We scrubbed our presence from every frequency. And we waited." Zotl's harness dropped half a meter as the magnetic field adjusted. "For what?" "To see who came looking." The condensation dripped. The harness hummed. The ship's ventilation system cycled air through filters that had not been replaced in too long. "Nobody came," Renn said. "Not the Vexari, not the Ari, not the Echo-Ancients. Not one vessel crossed into human space to investigate the silence. 200 years, nothing. We were erased from galactic memory because nobody cared enough to confirm we were gone." Zotl had no frame for this. The Graviath sovereignty had never stopped watching its borders. Every signal, every anomaly, every whisper of movement was logged and analyzed. The idea of leaving a species to vanish without verification was incomprehensible. "What did your fleet do to the Vexari invasion force?" Zotl asked. Renn's eyes did not waver. "Nothing. We did not destroy it. We let it enter the system. And when it was inside the orbit of our outermost world, we broadcast a single transmission on all frequencies." "What did it contain?" "A recording, a human child laughing." The harness stabilized. Zotl's cognitive processors cycled through permutations of the statement and found no tactical logic. "That is not a weapon." "It is not a threat," Renn agreed. "The Vexari could have modeled an ambush. They could have modeled defensive fire, evacuation protocols, even surrender. They could not model that. A species facing annihilation broadcasts the sound of one of its young enjoying itself. The Vexari fleet stopped. It held position for 3 days, then it retreated. Your species has never fought the Vexari since. No, they do not enter our space. They do not approach our systems. They treat us as a territory that is not worth investigating." Renn's voice carried no satisfaction. "The Vexari fear what they cannot predict. We made ourselves unpredictable. That is our only weapon." Zotl looked at the human for a long time, the scar on his jaw, the tired lines around his eyes, the way he spoke about survival as though it were a debt he was still paying off. "Your species survived by refusing to be understood," Zotl said. Renn did not answer. He did not need to. Zotl's personal channel hissed open. Tactician Ken's voice cut through the compartment, strained and clipped. "Prelate, the Vexari vessel has returned. It is not alone. 3 additional cruisers have emerged from fold space at the edge of the debris field. They are forming an encirclement pattern." The mess deck went still. Lice pushed off the counter. Sybil's fingers tightened on the data pad. "Our weapons cannot contest this," Ken said. "The outpost has nothing that can penetrate Vexari shielding at this range. We are defenseless." Zotl's harness flared, magnetic fields surging as it turned to face Renn. The human was already standing. His hand was on his jaw, thumb pressed against the scar. Zottl's voice came out flat, stripped of protocol. "Tell me you have another lie." The bridge of the good measure was dark. Renn killed every non-essential display before the Vexari hail finished. He wanted the room to feel dead. He wanted the aliens looking at the sensor returns to see a ship running on fumes. 4 cruisers on the main viewer, cold and silent against the stars. They had arrived without warning, without preamble. One moment the dead system was empty. The next moment the Vexari were there, a wall of polished metal and weapon mounts arranged in a formation that left no escape vector. The channel opened. The voice was synthetic, flat. No emotion, no inflection, just words delivered like a recitation. "Surrender the Graviath artifact. You have 30 minutes. Renn looked at Zottle. The Graviath commander stood in the corner of the bridge, its mass crowding the space. The magnetic harness crackled at the joints, blue discharge tracing patterns Renn did not know how to read. Zottle spoke without opening a channel. Its voice came through the bridge speakers, a low rumble that vibrated in Renn's chest. "The Graviath have no reinforcements in this sector. We are alone." Renn felt the words land in his stomach like a stone. He had known. He had hoped anyway. He pressed his thumb against the scar and turned to face Lice. "What power do we have?" Lice's hands moved over the engineering panel. Her jaw was set, her eyes fixed on the readouts. 3% on the fold anchor, enough for one jump of limited range. Point defense is offline. Engines are cold. We have emergency lighting and atmosphere circulation and nothing else. Renn nodded. He turned back to the viewer. 4 cruisers, 30 minutes. No weapons, no power, no escape. He had one card to play. Renn opened a channel to the Vexari commander. He kept his voice flat. He kept his face still. He made himself sound like a man who had already made peace with the outcome. "The artifact is armed. We have initiated the planetary collapse sequence on a 20-minute timer. If you approach, you will be caught in the gravitational wave. Your ships will be destroyed." The channel went silent. Sybil whispered from her station without looking up. Her fingers moved over the communications console, tracking frequencies. "They are running a deep scan of the engine. They will see through the lie in 12 minutes. The engine is dormant. There is no collapse sequence." Renn knew. He had known the moment he opened his mouth. The Vexari were not fools. They would scan, they would analyze, they would find the truth. But they would not find it in 12 minutes. Renn opened a private channel to Zottle. The Graviath commander's harness pulsed slower now. The rhythm matched something Renn recognized. Exhaustion. The bone-deep weight of a creature that had been afraid for too long. "We have to give them something to believe in," Renn said. "We have to make a show of sacrifice." Zottle's harness crackled once. A single blue arc traced from shoulder joint to chest plate, the Graviath equivalent of a slow breath. Zottle opened a channel to all Vexari vessels. Its voice was steady, formal, the voice of a commander delivering a final report. "The human crew will remain aboard the artifact to ensure the collapse sequence cannot be reversed. They will not survive. This is their choice." Zottle cut the channel. Renn turned to face his crew. Lice was pale. The gray streak in her hair caught the dim emergency light, making her look older. Her hands were still on the engineering panel, but she was not reading it anymore. She was watching him. Sybil was still. Her antique glasses reflected the main viewer. The Vexari cruisers hung in her lenses like 4 silver coffins. Lice spoke first. "You are going to detach the good measure from the engine. You are going to send us out on the last of the power. You are going to stay on the engine with Zottle." Renn nodded. "The Vexari will watch the engine. They will not watch the ship. You jump to the Graviath outpost. You warn them." Lice started to argue. Her mouth opened, her hands came up, her body tensed for the fight. Renn cut her off before she could find the words. "It is a lie. It is the only lie that works." The silence stretched. Lice's hands dropped. She looked at Sybil. Sybil gave a single nod, small, almost invisible. Lice turned and walked toward the airlock. Sybil followed. She paused at the threshold and looked back at Renn. Her pale eyes were wet. She did not speak. She did not need to. The airlock cycled. The bridge of the good measure was empty now, except for Renn and Zottle, and the emergency lights, and the 4 Vexari cruisers on the viewer. Renn watched the salvage arm retract. The ship detached from the engine. The good measure drifted away, a small dark shape against the stars, carrying the last of their power and the last of his crew. The fold anchor cycled. Lice's voice came through on a private channel. It crackled with the strain of the dying power system. The fold anchor is at 2%. I have one shot, it will not be precise. Renn pressed the transmit key. Take it. The fold anchor fired. The good measure vanished. One moment it was there, a silhouette against the nebula glow. The next moment it was gone, folded into a trajectory that might drop Lice and Sybil anywhere within 1,000 kilometers of their target. The Vexari cruisers did not move. They were still watching the engine. Renn stood at the control panel. Zottel stood beside him. The engine chamber was silent. No vibration of the salvage arm, no hum of the fold anchor, just the empty echo of their breath and the ancient cold of the metal floor. The cold was intense. It seeped through Renn's boots, through his soles, into the marrow of his bones. It felt old. It felt like something that had been waiting in this dead system for 800 years, patient and absolute. Zottel spoke. Its harness pulsed slower now. The rhythm matched something like exhaustion, like acceptance. Your crew is gone. We are alone. The Vexari will board this engine in 10 minutes. They will find no collapse sequence. Renn pressed his thumb against the scar. He could feel the raised tissue, the rough seam where the cargo tie-down had cut through his face 15 years ago. An old wound, a healed wound. Then we give them something else to be afraid of. He picked up a datapad from the control panel. It was Sybil's. She had left it behind. The screen still showed the Graviath script, the repeated lament she had translated in the mess deck. Renn opened a different file. A recording. He had found it in the ship's archive, buried in the cultural history databases, filed under emergency protocols. The sound of a child's laughter filled the engine chamber. It was a small sound, a bright sound. The laughter of a human child, maybe 4 years old, recorded on a world that no longer existed. 200 years old. 200 years of silence, and then this. Zottel's harness pulsed faster. The blue discharge quickened. What is this? Renn did not look up from the datapad. It is the same recording my ancestors broadcast 200 years ago, when the Vexari came, when we went dark. The child's laughter played on. It echoed through the empty chamber, through the ancient metal, through the cold. Zottel's voice dropped, lower, heavier. What does it mean? Renn looked at the viewer. The Vexari boarding craft had detached from the lead cruiser. They were drifting toward the engine. 5 small shapes, moving in formation, closing the distance. It means the humans are coming. The core chamber of the Consequence engine was cold. Colder than the rest of the ship. Colder than space should feel through a hull that had been dark for 8 centuries. The Graviath script pulsed blue on every wall, the lament cycling in endless spiral patterns that caught the eye and held it. Renn Wexler stood at the control panel with his thumb pressed against the scar on his jaw. The panel was dead. It had been dead since the moment they cut through the outer hull. No power, no collapse sequence, nothing but an 800-year-old prayer written in light. Prelate Zottel stood beside him, its massive gray-black frame suspended in the magnetic cradle of its harness. The blue discharge at its joints pulsed at a steady resting frequency. Calm, watching the hatch. The footsteps were audible through the deck plating. Metallic, precise, rhythmic in the way only synthetic legs could produce, 12 of them, maybe more. Renn counted the footfalls against the pulse of the script on the walls. 17 steps to the hatch. 7 seconds until the seal broke. The hatch cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The Vexari commander stepped through first. It was tall, taller than Renn by half a meter. Its body was a smooth shell of black alloy, seamless, unjointed, as if the armor had been grown rather than assembled. Its face was a mask. No eyes, no mouth, no expression, just a single polished surface that caught the blue light of the lament and bent it into strange patterns. It scanned the room, the control panel, the dead displays, the 2 figures standing in the center of the chamber. It did not see a weapon, it did not see a collapse sequence. It did not see anything that matched the profile of a threat. The Vexari commander spoke. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a flat synthesized tone that vibrated through the deck. Where is the weapon? Renn breathed. The air tasted like metal and old vacuum. He pointed past the commander, past the 12 soldiers standing in the corridor, past the hatch, past the boarding craft still docked at the external airlock. Out there. The commander turned its mask toward the cracked viewport on the far wall. The stars were visible through the fracture lines, sharp and cold and ancient. A smear of dust and debris marked the perimeter of the field where the good measure had drifted days ago. The commander turned back. The engine is not the weapon. No, Renn said, the engine is the lure. 12 synthetic faces tilted in unison. The soldiers in the corridor mirrored the gesture. It was not confusion. It was computation. The commander was running models, projecting outcomes, testing hypotheses against available data. Renn waited. He had learned to wait in the silence between lies. The silence was where the other side did its math. The silence was where doubt crept in. The debris field is seeded with human relay drones, he said. Dormant for 2 centuries. The laughter we transmitted was a signal. The drones are awake now. They transmitted a message. The commander's mask flickered. A tactical display updated somewhere in its internal processing. What message did they transmit? Renn let the question hang. He counted the beats of blue light on the walls. 2, 3, 4. We asked the galaxy if anyone was looking for us. The commander went still, not the stillness of a thinking creature. The stillness of a system that had hit a branching decision tree with no clear optimal path. The console on its forearm lit up with a tactical update. Renn could not see the display from where he stood. He did not need to. The ships are real, he said. They have been waiting at the edge of human space for 2 centuries. They received the signal. They came. Zottel shifted beside him. The harness crackled once, a brief surge of discharge, then settled back to resting frequency. The commander did not move. Its mask reflected the blue lament in perfect, unchanging geometry. 12 ships against 4 cruisers. The humans were outnumbered. The math was simple. But the math had never been the point. Renn watched the commander's stillness stretch into something else, something that looked like hesitation. The Vexari had never encountered a species that lied as a default. They had never faced an opponent whose first instinct was to control what the enemy saw rather than what the enemy could destroy. The commander did not know if there were more ships. It did not know if the engine was truly dormant. It did not know anything except that it could not predict the outcome. The Vexari commander raised its arm, a single gesture, precise, final. Withdraw. The 12 soldiers turned in perfect synchronization. Their footsteps receded down the corridor. The hatch cycled shut. The docking clamps released. The boarding craft detached with a dull thump that vibrated through the hull. Renn stood very still and listened to the silence. The cruiser fleet turned at the edge of the debris field. Their drives flared once, twice, and then they folded out of the system. The distortion in space collapsed behind them like a wound closing. The chamber was quiet, the blue light pulsed, the lament cycled. Zottel turned its massive frame toward Renn. The harness hummed at a frequency Renn had not heard before. Lower, calmer. There were no relay drones, there was no signal, the ships were a fabrication. Renn sat down on the cold floor. His legs did not want to hold him anymore. He pressed his palm flat against the metal and felt the faint vibration of the ship's systems. Systems that should not have been running. Systems that were running anyway. The ships are real, he said. Zottel's harness flickered. You said there were no relay drones. There weren't. The signal was the sound of a dying reactor in an empty debris field, but the ships heard it. 12 ships, real ships, waiting at the edge of human space for 2 centuries. They received the transmission. They came. Zottel said nothing. It did not need to. The calculations were running behind its featureless gray-black face. Where did you send the transmission? Zottel asked. Everywhere, Renn said. We transmitted the same signal the Vexari heard, the same laughter, the same fake emergency. We sent it on every frequency we had. We hoped someone would answer. And they did. The console on the wall lit up, a single green indicator in a sea of dead displays. Communications, incoming signal. Renn did not move to answer it. He did not have the strength. The channel opened automatically. The voice that came through was calm, old, patient, the voice of someone who had been waiting a very long time. Shipmaster Wexler, we received your pulse. The isolation is over. Welcome home. Renn closed his eyes. He had been lying for so long, to the Graviath, to the Vexari, to his own crew, to himself. He had built a life out of half-truths and false fronts and carefully constructed perceptions. He had forgotten what it felt like to hear a voice that was not calculating, not testing, not probing for an angle. This voice was not lying. He could feel the shape of it in his chest, the weight of something he had not carried in 20 years. Trust. He opened his eyes. The blue light of the lament was still cycling on the walls. The words were the same words that had been there for 8 centuries. Forgive us. We did not know another way. The belief was false. Zottel watched him. The harness hummed at its resting frequency, calm, waiting. Renn looked at the Graviath standing beside him. He looked at the blue lament on the walls. He looked at the cracked viewport where 12 human warships had just emerged from the dark. "The Graviath have a choice," he said. "Stay hidden or talk to us." Zottel turned its massive frame toward the wall. It read the words of the lament. The script had been carved by Graviath hands 800 years ago, hands that had built a weapon of planetary destruction, hands that had written a prayer of apology and buried it in the dark. "This device exists because we believed we had no other choice," Zottel said. "The belief was false." It opened a channel to its fleet. "Prelate Zottel to all Graviath vessels. The isolation ends now." The blue light on the walls kept cycling. The lament kept turning. But the silence in the chamber had changed. It was no longer the silence of waiting. It was the silence of something beginning. Renn sat on the cold floor and listened to the sound of his own breath. Warm, alive. He had spent his whole life lying. The truth, it turned out, was heavier,